The Birdie Board Podcast is brought to you by the Birdie Board app, the easiest way to track matches, scores, and handicaps with friends. Now, here's your host, Corey, with another episode of the Birdie Board Podcast.
Welcome back to the Birdie Board Podcast. I've been doing it a little over 3 months. Most of the time has been winter golf, which is interesting to start a podcast about golf where most people probably aren't even playing golf right now. But it's going well, and I'm trying to keep the focus on what can we do during the winter. So on today's episode, I'm going to continue talking about the rules of golf and just trying to expand that knowledge. I think that's really good for winter golf because you don't get the opportunity to go out and practice as much, but you get the opportunity to learn a lot. These episodes are great because you can just kind of listen to them and not have any action items to take from them. The first time I did this was actually episode 11, where we talked about the golf rule basics and then just the dropping rules. Today we're going to talk about the rules around the tee box. And then at the end of this episode, I'll give some birdie board updates that I thought are pretty cool. All right, so I will start with saying not all of these rules are for the average golfer. And the first rule here is an example of that. So the first rule is the official rule around a late arrival. Now, I have friends that they like to show up right at the tee time or right afterwards. We just tee off. They catch up. If they're really late, I pay for them and they pay me back. Something like that. I'm sure we all have friends like that. But there are official rules around late arrival that I would say most of us as casual golfers probably won't ever follow, but it is interesting to learn about. So you might wonder what happens by the rule book if there's a late arrival. And what that means is if the player is not ready to play at their tee time. So it's not just that they've arrived, they're ready to tee off at their tee time. If they're not there or not ready, up to 5 minutes, it's a 2-stroke penalty. So if you tee off at 110, your buddy's not there, they have up to 115, but they're going to get a 2-stroke penalty at 110 if they're not ready. Again, probably not a rule that most people, casual golfers, follow, but it is interesting to learn about. Now, after 5 minutes, then they are technically disqualified. So again, this isn't really for casual golfers, but that is the actual rules. And then starting the round before the tee time is also not permitted. For a casual golfer, we typically run into starters. Go off when the starter tells you to go off. Communicate to the starter. If you have a friend running late, they can usually swap around tee times, bump you back a spot or something like that. Most courses are really flexible with that, and you might get some griping depending on the course, PGA Pro or the starter or something like that. But the best thing you can do is just communicate. Say, hey, my buddy's running. If they tell you 15 minutes, say, hey, my buddy's running 20 minutes behind. I've already paid for them in the clubhouse. Can you bump around our tee time or something like that? It's always a better route. And from my own experience, most starters accommodate those requests, and most of them like that, especially giving them a heads up because then they have a chance to kind of reorganize the tee sheet. But those are the official rules around arriving late. So another thing, and so moving on to the next topic here, is you can have a maximum of 14 clubs in your bag. You might have heard that before, but that is the official rule. So if you have an extra club, it doesn't mean you have to go put it back in your car or anything like that. You can just not play it. And the easiest way to indicate that you're not playing it is just turn it over in your bag so it's the club head side up. That would be a nice reminder to you that this club isn't in play, you can't play it. For a casual golfer, I would say don't worry about it too much. But if you're playing in some sort of competition, the rule is that you can't have more than 14 clubs, but it doesn't mean you have to get rid of a club. It has to be before you begin the round, which is why it relates to the tee time. And the first tee box, that's kind of the start of a round. So you just need to make sure that you have 14 clubs or less in your bag, or you indicate which clubs you're not going to play during the round. And you can do that by flipping it over. Maybe you have some athletic tape in your bag. You can just put a little piece of tape around the end just to remind yourself that you're not allowed to play it. So if you do end up playing over 15 clubs, so one of the clubs that you indicated you're not going to use, then it is a 2-stroke penalty on each hole that you had too many clubs, for a maximum of 4 strokes. So if you do it on hole 1 and hole 2, you're going to get 2 strokes penalties on 1 and 2, but you wouldn't get it on 3. You are going to, let's see, if you clubs are, I'm going through my notes right now to see if there's any way you could get disqualified. If you do use clubs that are out of play that you marked as out of play, then that is disqualification. The scenario I talked about before where you use clubs, that's like on mistake, where you have 15 clubs, you didn't realize you have 15 clubs, you use it on holes 1 and 2, then you realize that you would be able to get away with just a 2-stroke penalty. However, if you start the round knowingly that you have more than 14 clubs in your bag, that could result in a disqualification. Again, all these rules are more for like competitive play, but if you're trying to just understand like how do I truly play golf, and that's something I enjoy, is like I would personally probably not abide by the late arrival, but like the maximum 14 clubs, because that's just a part of golf. Like you have to play within the rules. I don't want to have, even though it's really only advantage for myself if I'm playing by myself or something, to have 15 clubs. I'm just going to make sure I have 14 because that's part of the rules of the game. So let's move on next to the order of play. So on the first tee, it's just the order. You can randomize it with your friends. There's not really any set rules. If you're playing like a tournament, you would go in the order of what your names are on the tee sheet for the first hole, and then every hole after that, it's going to be the winner of the previous hole. If you guys tied the previous hole, then you just keep going back to find the winner. If you go all the way back to the first hole, then you just go back to that original order. I think that's pretty understood, and I would encourage you guys to follow that order as long as pace of play allows. This is a trade-off between pace of play and ready golf. Ready golf is like whoever's ready to go ahead and hit. If it's a busy day or something like that, I would definitely do that. If you're trying to do a little bit of a competition with your friends, push this correct order, because it does give a little bit of an advantage to the person who doesn't go first, because they get to see the ball trajectory, they get to see maybe a hazard you didn't see before, maybe some wind patterns and things like that. So it does create a little bit of advantage for that second golfer. So I would encourage you guys to follow that rule. Now, if a player tees off out of turn, that stroke still counts for that person, but there's no penalty, so it's not really like a aggressive rule to play by. However, if the player agreed upon the wrong order so that they can get an advantage. So imagine this scenario. You're playing in a twosome. One player is definitely out of the tournament. The other person is competing for the top. If that person out of the tournament says, "Hey, I'll go first so you can see the wind," and the other person agrees, then that's an unfair advantage. That's a disqualification. Or actually, not a disqualification. That is a 2-stroke penalty. So if there's some scenario like that where it is agreed upon to go out of order for some advantage, especially in like a tournament, then that would be a 2-stroke penalty. So keep that in mind. But in most cases, order you play doesn't really matter. You're not going to get any penalties just under normal conditions. But I would encourage you all to abide by the normal order of play rules. All right, so let's talk about the teeing area. So the obvious thing is there's going to be 2 tee markers on the tee box. You can play up to 2 club lengths behind those tee markers. So it's 2 of your longest clubs, not including your putter. For most people, that's probably going to be your driver. You're probably already going to have a driver at hand, so it's pretty easy to just lay down your driver, mark the end of it, put your foot there or something, lay down again. That's how far back you can tee off. You cannot extend outside of the tee markers. You're allowed to stand outside of them, but your ball's not allowed to be outside of them. Now, what dictates a ball outside of it? The ball has to be completely outside of the line, so either completely in front of the tee marker, or completely outside of it, left or right. If that happens, then you incur a 2-stroke penalty. And let's see, 2-stroke penalty, and you would have to hit your 3rd stroke again off of the tee box. So you couldn't take the 2-stroke penalty. Let's say you bomb it down the middle of the fairway, 300. Unfortunately, part of the breaking this rule means you would have to re-tee it up for your 3rd stroke on the tee box. There is a little nuance to match play. If you play outside the teeing area on match play, the opponent may immediately require you to cancel and replay the stroke. But if they say nothing, I don't encourage dishonest play, but if they say nothing, then there's no penalty for you and you can play your ball even though you teed it up outside the teeing area. So a little uniqueness for match play there. All right, moving on, playing from the wrong teeing area is just the same as if you teed it up outside of the tee box. So you can think of that just as like a normal rule, like no matter what, if you're beyond 2 club lengths, whether you're on the same tee box or some random tee box, like that's just the rule. You're still outside of it. The same sort of rules apply. All right, let's talk about the tee markers, because this is something I've seen people do before. So when you're on the tee box, the tee markers are classified as fixed objects, so you're not permitted to move them at all. You can't move them out of your stance. You can't move them to get a better ball. You can't move them out of your club path. You have to move your ball to make sure that you have a clean spot. Now, this is just a personal thing that I do. Sometimes I play courses that don't have the best tee boxes. In those cases, I just tee off in a spot that looks normal. Whether that does require me to slightly move a tee marker and then I'll move it back, or I tee off outside the tee box. If I'm just playing by myself or just casually with a friend, I'll just try to get the most normal tee box at a course that has really bad tee boxes. So it just depends on the type of play you guys want to do. I encourage you to try to follow the rules as best as you can, but be lenient, especially at more of those mid-tier courses that might not have the best conditions. All right, tee marker. We talked about how you can't move the tee markers. If you do move them, it's a 2-stroke penalty. However, if your ball lands in another tee box, like let's say you hit it and you land it just up the fairway on another tee box, the rules around the tee markers actually change, and now they become movable objects. So in that case, you are allowed to move the tee marker so that you can hit your second shot. You just can't move them off of the tee box for your first shot. All right, this rule is something I found kind of interesting. So you cannot, anywhere in the courses we've talked about, improve your lie at all. However, the tee box is different. You're actually allowed to pat down the grass around your ball. You're actually allowed to fluff up the grass if you want to just hit it off of it. There's a lot of free rules you can do around the tee box to actually improve your lie, strangely enough. So that is permittable. You're allowed to move any objects that might disturb you in the way, like rocks or anything like that, except for the tee markers as we just talked about. And you can do all of that without penalty. All right, so let's talk about an accident. I'm sure this has happened to everyone before, where they just accidentally hit the ball. You're lining up to it. You just kind of glaze it with your club or something. There's no penalty for doing that. You just pick the ball back up, tee it up, just take your shot like normal. I would recommend, if that happens to you, reset your shot sequence, take a step back, go through the motions again, just so you can get back into your right rhythm. Now, if you do like an air shot where you swing and miss, I've had friends do this before. It does count as a stroke. It doesn't count as like a penalty though. You just end up hitting your second shot then. If you do kind of hit the ball, but it doesn't end up going outside the tee area, you are technically allowed to tee it back up for your second shot. So definitely take advantage of that if you have like a whiff or something like that. Re-tee it back up, improve your lie. Obviously, you can't advance it towards the hole anymore, but you already had a really rough first shot. Take the full advantage of that second shot, tee it up, fluff up the grass, whatever you need to kind of get it back into the hole. And remember, it's not a penalty. It's just like if you're playing it a par 4, a lot of people play bogey golf, so I know sometimes I'm thinking, okay, I have 2 shots to get to the green and then 3 shots of putt, or maybe I have 3 shots to get to the green, 2 approach shots, a chip, and then 2 putt for a bogey. Try and play like that. Well, it's not the end of the world if you have a bad shot off the tee box. It just makes it, okay, now I'm playing more of a normal par, so I want to get my next shot down the middle of fairway. I want to try to get my approach shot as close or onto the green as I can, and then maybe 2 putt it to save the hole for a bogey, something like that. So I don't know if the play is always to play more aggressive, but that is one strategy you can take after that. The biggest thing is that second shot you just want to get off the tee box. Feel free to play a safer shot so you can actually get down the fairway and have a chance. All right. This is another one of those rules that probably only applies to more tournament golf, but it is a rule that's interesting. You are allowed to discuss distances, position of bunkers or penalty areas, the pin position, the rules, and other general facts. So you're allowed to do that with your opponent. If you can't see the green from the tee, you are allowed to ask someone to indicate the position of that tee. But this is where the rule kind of comes in. You're not allowed to ask or give advice before the tee shot. For example, which club did you take? Take a 7-iron, things like that. You're not allowed to do. You see pros all the time kind of peek over at their opponent to see what club they take, and they do that because they're not allowed to ask what club they take based off of the rules. If you receive unsolicited advice, there's no penalty for doing that, and I think I forgot to mention, if you do ask, it would be a 2-stroke penalty. Now, for casual golfers, I say ask all the way. We're all growing in golf or something like that. But if you're playing more of a competitive play, just refrain from asking unless if it's kind of like just a competitive buddy play. But if you're in any sort of tournament, they're probably going to try to enforce a rule like this. All right. We are getting near the end. I have 2 more rules I want to go over for the tee box. So the next one is a provisional / lost ball. This definitely applies to probably every single golfer that's listening to this podcast, good or bad, is what you do when you think you're not going to be able to find your ball. This is a really important rule to understand, and it can actually save you a lot of strokes in the end. So if you suspect you're not going to be able to find your ball, or it's landed out of bounds, so again, out of bounds is like a boundary line, definitely indicated by white stakes, then you announce. That's key. You have to announce that you're playing a provisional, and you tee it up and play it as if it's your first shot until you reach the approximate location of where you believe your original ball to be. So what you do in that case is once you get to where you think your original ball is, you can look around. Sometimes you just lost it. It just a slice into the woods or something like that. But if it's kind of on the edge and you're playing provisional just in case you can't find it, you have to give a good effort, 2-3 minutes to look for your ball. If you do find your ball and it's in bounce, you have to play it. If not, then you can play your provisional. You still have to follow the normal rules. So you would have taken your provisional would have been like your second shot with the penalty. So you're just kind of going to continue as if you lost your ball originally. It probably would save you, though, if you were able to find your original ball, assuming it's a decent distance out there. And we've talked about that in the past, is sometimes the best thing you can do off the tee box is just relax and full send, not recklessly, but really try to get some distance on there, because worst case scenario, you can be down there and find your ball pretty far down there with a penalty. So there's a lot of scenarios there that you guys can play around with. So if you don't say you're hitting a provisional, you end up just doing a 1-stroke penalty there. So it kind of ends up being like a 2-stroke penalty, because you would have the lost ball out of bounds plus the provisional penalty. And then also you cannot play provisionals if you hit it into a penalty area, so a yellow or a red stake area. In those cases, you have to go up to see if you can find your ball and then play the appropriate stroke or the appropriate color from there. So red stake, you could probably find or possibly find it in the red stake area and play it. Yellow, you'll have to drop and take your stroke distance. So just a few things there that you can remember about provisional and lost balls. And then the last thing, which is just kind of a fun little thing, you are technically allowed to chip and putt without penalty while you're waiting on the tee box. So chipping is probably the most useful. Get a ball and just bring your 56 degree or something, 60 degree or something, just do a couple chips towards a tee marker. If you're waiting for someone, that's totally fine. It also kind of keeps you loose and kind of keeps the club in your hand. Nothing against the rules for that. Just don't forget your wedge while you're up on the on the tee box. All right, so that's it for the tee. I'm going to try to keep doing these rules every few weeks. The next rule category is the fairway and the rough. I'm just following like a little book that I have that I carry around with me. I got it off Amazon. I really like it because it explains the rules really simply. So sharing it with you guys on the podcast I think is perfect for winter golf. All right, let's talk about Birdie Board a little bit. So let's see. Actually, before I want to talk about Birdie Board, I did want to bring up the TGL. So this is, actually, I forget what TGL stands for. TGL is, I'm Googling it, Tomorrow's Golf League. It's a golf league ran by Tiger Woods, and I think Rory McIlroy is in it now as well. But what they have is, if you haven't seen TGL before, it is a indoor golf league that's in association with the PGA. So it's played just in the off season. It's played by PGA players on teams. And I watched a few episodes last year and I absolutely loved it. And I can kind of see where they're going with it because they designed these indoor golf matches to be able to fit in a football field. So right now it's just played in, I think like the SoFi Center down in Florida, which is, I think just like a, just a big building. I don't think it's a stadium or anything. I guess conference center maybe, but something like that. But the whole indoor golf area is built to be able to be fit inside of a football stadium. So you can definitely see where they're going with this, where they're hoping that it grows big enough where it could be put into stadiums for larger audiences. And how it has a big, huge, I would say like 30 or 40 yard wide screen that the players hit into off of natural grass, which is really interesting. And then based off of their drive and their approach shot, they actually have a big green that changes based off of the hole that they play. And then there's a little light that shines down that tells the golfer where to put their ball on the green or off the green. They might even have to chip. I really enjoyed watching it last year. It was really, really fun. Really like easy to just put on the background too if you're working or something and turning it on. They're quick matches. But I would definitely recommend watching it. It doesn't hurt to watch, and it's really fun to watch during the off season. It's a different take on golf, being all inside and also team-based. It's interesting that, like, compared to LIV, it's probably already doing better than LIV Golf, but LIV has so much more money backing it and everything. So I think the biggest difference is its association with the PGA, where LIV was against it. Obviously, TGL is in association with the PGA. So all cool stuff there. Definitely recommend watching it. So let's jump back to Birdie Board a little bit. If you don't know, Birdie Board is a golf app for just casual weekend golf or small scale golf tournaments. I used it on a golf trip. We did a 3-round golf match and then competitions across each day. The first day was like full team versus full team. The second day was 2v2. The last day was just 1v1 stroke play, but with our handicaps. It was a lot of fun. So Birdie Board is the app I created to facilitate these sorts of matches. Like I said, it can be used just for a single round for a weekend golf, or it could do a multi-round golf trip. And a lot of this content that I'm creating is based off of Birdie Board just because I love golf and I'm trying to share as much as I can. But the cool thing about Birdie Board is just the community that it's starting to create. But I will say it is winter too, so I haven't seen hardly as many downloads as I don't want to say hope. I kind of expected going into winter, not anticipating a ton of downloads. But what was really cool to see is I saw 12 downloads from real users the other day from Australia. So that was pretty cool. That probably a good portion of the users of Birdie Board right now aren't even based in the United States, which I would love to see. I'm going to be telling people that my app is international now, even though we have under 10 people probably internationally. But hey, I can still say it. So that's pretty cool. The Birdie Board podcast isn't too bad either. Like I said at the beginning, this is the 14th episode. Across the first 13, I have 135 downloads. This doesn't include the YouTube plays either, which is like 15. So I probably have about 150 overall, which is pretty cool. By far, the first episode is still the most listened to. I think that makes sense. Probably a lot of the first episodes are always the most. But I've seen a good bit of downloads for each episode, and I definitely see it going up. So that's pretty cool. And then the social media is still doing pretty well. I think the best one I have is still YouTube. I think I'm just about at 150,000 views for the videos. Let's take a look. Yeah, I just passed 150,000 actually. We have 457 subscribers. So pretty happy with that. The views per video that I put out are definitely going up as well, which is pretty exciting. So it's still winter time, and could you guys continue that winter golf learning? If you want to learn more about what you can do over the winter, the last probably 6 episodes I've done are all about just winter golf and what you can do during the winter. So definitely listen to those, especially Christmas just passed. So a lot of you probably have new clubs or new golf balls or new golf gear that you're anxious to get and use. There's a lot of strategies that I've talked about, and then I've had golf instructors and other creators come on this podcast as well that might give you some good ideas as well. Anyways, that's it for this episode of the Birdie Board Podcast. Thanks for listening, everyone.
Thanks for tuning into the Birdie Board Podcast. If you enjoyed it, subscribe and share it with a friend who loves golf as much as you do. And before your next round, grab the Birdie Board app, free on the Apple App Store and Google Play Store, and let it handle the scoring while you enjoy the game.